Hey everyone, and welcome to Dr. Tara Tuesdays. I am your host, Dr. Tara, and I am so excited to welcome you to tonight's show. This kicks off a series of two things that I'm really excited about, passionate about. One, viewers' choice, the fact that we have viewers that believe in the show and believe in the topics that we present is so appreciated by me. So it's viewers' choice. We asked questions about what topics you all wanted to see, and so all month long, we will be addressing topics that you all want to see, and then also mental health month. And for today, we're going to be talking about mental health, or for the month, we'll be talking about mental health and relationships. And we're actually going to start with teaching our children about emotional health and mental health awareness. And so I'm so excited that you all are joining me. Make sure you say hi. And also, as always, bring your expertise and your experiences in the comments. The Dr. Tara community is a safe community if this is your first time here. And so feel free to bring your own expertise and talk about how this relates to you. If you don't have a pen and paper, you may want to get one. I'm going to bring up a few exercises that we're going to hopefully really bring this point home or bring the topic home today around investing in your child's emotional well-being or their emotional health. So, hey, Burgundy. And so as we get started, just feel free to grab a sheet of paper and a pen, or make sure that you have one handy that you can use after the live has ended. So I want to jump right into it. So when we talk about teaching our children about emotional health, what does this mean? Well, for me, it means that we as parents, as guardians, as families, teach and understand how we respond to our children expressing their emotions. And so whether we are meaningful in our response, whether we are dismissive in our response, whether we are intentionally or unintentionally responding to how our children express emotions, we are teaching our children how they should feel about their own mental and emotional well-being. That is the first point that I want to make that is so important to me. One of the things that I've often gotten when I have worked with parents has always been, I want to get my child to either start doing something or stop doing something. And there's usually an expectation that we'll say, okay, well, if you teach them how to do this or teach them how to do this, but there's a lot more hesitancy that comes into play when we focus that, or when we put the lens back on us as parents. And I'm going to speak from a parenting standpoint too. I know that I respond better, my children respond better when I'm able to meet their emotional needs, and understanding that me meeting their emotional needs supports their mental health. And so as we think about mental health in this context, I want us to think about our responses to our children's emotional needs. And so we tend to respond unintentionally without even necessarily being aware of it in one of three ways. So the three themes for today are mean, weak, or gone. Mean, weak, or gone. And those are usually our emotional or behavioral responses when we become triggered by our children expressing one of their emotions. And so the interesting thing about parenting, the interesting thing about raising children is that oftentimes we do what we've been taught and we do what we've been exposed to. And our brain has normalized these responses, mean, weak, or gone, as normal responses when children show certain emotions. And so most of us in our own upbringing have experienced one or all of these responses when we were ourselves children, young adults, or even older adults. When we express an emotion, how many of us, you can give me a thumbs up or put something in the comments, we feel like we're expressing ourselves, but the person's response to us is mean, or they give in, like, you know what, just take whatever you want, or you know what, I'm sorry, and I haven't even said why I was upset, or they become distant, I'm just shutting down, right? So it carries over into adult relationships. And one of the things that I want to emphasize, and why we actually started Mental Health Awareness Month with talking about children, is because that, Christina, thank you for that thumbs up, that parent-child attachment or guardian-child, family-child attachment, early relationships literally set the foundation for how we relate with others literally for the rest of our lives, right? It sets the foundation. And so I say that to emphasize that for me, it was so important to start with children's emotional health so that we can see how it progresses into other areas of our life. And it was interesting for me, or important for me, to start with that parenting aspect, because usually our relationship with our children is kind of like an indication of our relationship with other people. Parenting is just another relationship that we're in. So we're going to start with the 6 universal emotions. I usually have my whiteboard. I don't have a whiteboard today. So I have my handy dandy sheet of paper. So we have 6 universal emotions. Hopefully you all can see these. I'm going to put my face in the back. And they are joy, anger, sadness, shame, fear, and curiosity. Joy, anger, sadness, shame, fear, and curiosity. Write them down. Joy, anger, sadness, shame, fear, and curiosity. The reason why we start with these, the reason why I bring these up so much in our Dr. Tara Tuesdays is because regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of sex, socioeconomic status, culture, they are 6 universal emotions that we all have. And when we have them literally from birth, from young childhood. And so when we think about having someone be with us during our emotional expression of these emotions, that sets the foundation, or really sets our confidence level in having someone, or having the confidence to understand that these emotions are safe. And so I want to have another circle. So as parents, our job is a skill called being with. And I have this circle, right? Our job is a skill called being with. And I want you all to think about this circle, right? Just a circle. Our job is to be with our children as they experience 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these emotions. And so reality of it is that ideally, yes, I want my child to come to me when they're upset. I want them to come to me when they're angry. I want them to come to me when they feel like they've done something wrong. However, the reality of it is that we all have certain emotions that we respond better to, right? Because we are people first, parents second, and we've been taught that certain emotions are acceptable. We've been taught that certain emotions are better than others. And I want us to take a moment to sit with that. And you can put in the comments, which emotions, you know what? I do really good when my child feels this emotion or when they express this emotion, but I struggle when they express this emotion. So I'm going to put myself in this being with circle. And some of you may have seen me do this before, but I want to bring this in. So usually we have these emotions, and I'm only choosing 3. I'm choosing joy, sadness, and anger because I feel like they are easy to relate to. But let's start with joy. Joy is fully in being with circle. So let's take Lola. You all know Lola. That's my girl. So when Lola is happy, she's able to bring that emotion to me, right? She's able to bring that joy to me, and I'm able to receive that. I'm able to be with Lola when she expresses joy. So I don't look at Lola smiling and say to her, you know what, Lola, if you keep smiling, I'm gonna give you something else to smile about, right? You better wipe that smile off your face, right? What are you so happy about? I don't do that to her, right? When she is feeling joy, I'm able to be with her joy. I'm not trying to distract her. I'm not trying to take it from her. She can bring it to me. And usually her joy triggers my own joy, right? So I want us to think about, so joy for me would be an emotion that I can be with Lola as she experiences this. Now let's take the emotion of sadness. So sadness is on half in and half out of the circles, on the cusp. And what does that mean? That means that Lola can still feel sad, but depending on my mood, depending on how I'm interpreting the situation, I may or may not be able to be with her, right? So sometimes Lola is sad, and you know what, Lola, you're sad. Come here. Let me give you comfort. Let me talk to you about this. Let's process this together. Yes, Corcoran, yeah, I don't have to fix her joy, right? Thank you. That's a perfect point. But when she's sad, you're exactly right. I may want to fix it, right? So when I get into fix it mode, then I'm not able to be with her because usually I'm fixing this emotion not to make Lola feel better, but I'm fixing this emotion to make me feel better, right? And children can pick that up, right? She's sad, but she sees that her sadness is triggering my sadness, or it's triggering something in me. And so a lot of times what children learn is I need to hide this emotion in some way. How does she learn that? I'm not doing it intentionally. What is my response? So Lola is sad. She brings this sadness to me and I distract her, right? Lola, oh no, you're sad. Let's go get some ice cream. You know what? Let's go get this, right? She needs me to be with her in this emotion, not like you said, Corcoran, not try to fix her sadness, but allow her to experience it. And I'm using distraction. That's one thing I may use. Or I might try to minimize her emotion. And so I am going to say, you know what? I don't even know why you're sad about this. And Corcoran, you hit the nail right on the head, especially if I've caused the sadness. I might minimize her sadness, right? And a lot of times, and you're getting a little, you are leading the course, because when we think about it, when I'm experiencing sadness and she's experiencing sadness, or if I'm experiencing frustration, then sometimes I want her to feel certain emotions because I feel like her behavior warrants a certain emotional response. And I feel like what we've been trained to think about discipline, and that's what the different Dr. Tara Tuesdays, but what we've been trained a lot of times to think about discipline, that discipline has to bring about certain emotions rather than bring about change and response and reaction in a healthy way. And so if I've caused sadness, then only one of us gets to be sad. I can't be with her as she experiences, or that's my thought process. So I may use distraction. I might try to minimize, right? You don't have anything to be sad about. I should be the one crying. I don't know why you're so upset. I don't know why you're so sad. How many of us have ever heard that in our own lives, right? So I'm not able to be with her. So that emotion of sadness, what she learns to do very early on is kind of feel me out. Can I bring this to her? Can I share this emotion? Can I share this emotion with her? And then we have anger on the outside of our circle, right? So joy is inside. I don't have to fix it. I can be with it. Sadness, depending on how I feel, I may or may not be able to be with it. And then anger. And so the emotion, or the child that I like to use here, is my lovely teenager, right? So teenage anger, ooh, that's a hard one for me. Especially if I ask you to wash the dishes and you get upset about me asking you to wash the dishes. I might be a choir of one here, but if you feel me, give me a thumbs up. And so my son, he might be angry about something, and guess what? His anger triggers my own anger. And going back to Corcoran, what he said, if I'm angry and he's angry, then we get into a power struggle. And so then I work to overpower his anger, right? My anger is the only one that can survive. And so all of these 6 universal emotions go into that being with circle, and all of them kind of fall somewhere on that being with circle. And so when we think about understanding how we process it, I want us to understand how we process it from the lens of mean, weak, and gone. And so bringing that into this context. So there are certain emotions, and I want to bring these back up, that I feel like I can be with my children on. I feel like when they express these emotions, I can be with them. I can hold these emotions in a safe space. Those are great. If you want to put those in the comments, that's fine. What I want to focus on is those emotions that I struggle with, that I find myself either using distraction, using minimization, or using overpowering, meaning that I'm not able to be with them. And Corcoran, like you said, there's only room enough for one person to experience this emotion. And so what we find is that having someone be with or not be with us sends a message to our child that certain emotions are safer to express than others. And I want to emphasize the word safer because I want to speak about how the brain interprets emotions, especially emotion expression, emotion regulation. And that brain operates from the lens of safety. I express this emotion, I emote this emotion, I do this behavior, and I'm looking for this response. I'm looking for this interplay between me and the parent. And so based on the response that I get, I'm learning that this emotion is not safe. And so the interesting thing about this mean, weak, or gone is that they all equate to not feeling safe. When I respond in a mean way to my child, I'm letting them know that this emotional expression is not safe. When I respond in being weak, meaning I'm giving into them, I'm also letting them know that this emotion is not safe. And then when I check out, I'm letting them know that this emotion is not safe. And so let's explore why that is. When I respond in being mean, right? So you don't have a reason to be upset. I'm the only one that can be upset. I'm using shame. I'm using whatever I'm using to kind of get my point across. I'm just being mean. I'm not protecting my child. When I'm being weak, when I'm giving in to my child, right? When I'm not setting boundaries. Well, no, boundaries for a child equals protection. And so when I'm giving in, I'm not setting boundaries. Well, if I'm not setting boundaries with my child, then that brain is learning that I can't rely on you to protect. I can't rely on you to set a stage, to set limits for me. And that's one of the things that children need. And so that also serves no protection. And then when I'm gone, I'm just gone, right? And children learn how to interact with us in the context of just having touch points when we check in and then we all go out. Now, all of them have to do with protection, but we're going to bring culture into it for a second as well, because often culturally, and this is where I want us to get a little bit honest with ourselves, culturally, and put them in the comments too, we have been taught that one of these, mean, weak, or gone, usually outweighs the other. And Christina, like you said, boundaries are essential, right? Mean, weak, or gone usually outweigh some of the others. So how many of us, you can give me a show of hands, we have watched videos or we've heard people say, man, if that was my child, I would do such and such and such and such. That parent is too much, too nice. They give them too much, right? So that means that in that moment, I am choosing mean over being weak, right? Or, you know, I don't know how that parent could be so such and such to that child. They should just do this, right? This poor child, poor thing, come on over here to me. In that moment, I'm choosing being weak over mean. Some of us, you know what, I can't even deal with these kids. I'm going over here. I'm gone, right? I'm choosing gone over any of the other two. And the thing that I want to dispel for us this evening is that all three of them have the same results. And that's something that we have to learn. And the beautiful thing about parents is that sometimes we mix the two. And I will acknowledge, I'll own this, that I'm guilty of that too, right? I can be a great, mean, weak parent, right? Get in the store, don't ask me for anything. We're not doing this, and I can't believe you did this. What kind of shoes do you want, right? I've been mean to you the whole time, and then guess what? I'm gonna be weak, right? You know, I started off, we're all in this quarantine and chill time. You know, I've seen so many people set schedules, and I'm not cooking this, and I'm not cooking this. I'm fussing at you all the whole time I'm cooking. I'm being mean, weak, right? That's a very real thing. And so understanding how all of that sends, again, from the brain perspective, sends mixed signals to this child around which emotions I can express and which emotions I can't. And so as we dive into this, one of the things that we're going to think about today is which one do I tend to yield to, and which emotion serves as trigger points for me in order to express them, and hopefully what can I do about it so that I set up the platform so that I can be with my child as they experience and as they express all of these emotions. So we're going to start with mean. Where does meanness come from, right? Why do we feel this way? Why do I feel like meanness is the way to come? A lot of times it's culturally. A lot of times it comes from, and Shameen, you're saying, wow, that mean weak. Yes, that is my default, right? I'll be mean and then get right into you, right? And so the beautiful thing about our children is that they know, yes, Christina, enough passive aggressive, right? Well, I call it aggressively passive, right? So when we think about our children are experts of us. And so by the time our children are 5, 7, by the time they're 12, they're pros. They know, okay, if I can sit through this 5-minute lecture, she's going or he's going to give me what I want anyway. And so I'll do it. So I'll do the behavior because it still doesn't come with any boundaries. Or, you know, they say they're going to take my game away and they say they're going to take it away for a week. But if I keep nagging them and asking them and asking them and asking them, then they're going to give it back to me in 2 days. I'm willing to do that because again, they know us just as much as we know them. And so understanding how that ties into them not being able to express their authentic selves, which is their fullness of their emotions. And this is something, again, that it starts in childhood, but it tends to stay with us literally for the rest of our lives. And we have to be and we're going to get into this as we move through this series, but it's a conscious effort to acknowledge, okay, well, when I was little, I wasn't able to express this emotion, or when I was this age, I wasn't able to express this emotion, or with this person, rather, I wasn't able to express this emotion. And this is how it carries over into different relationships. And so when we think about this, let's start with mean. When we think about the cultural implications, a lot of times being mean comes from the lens of control, right? And so with parenting, the thought is that if I can control you to a certain extent, then I see myself as a more effective parent. And there's one thing, and Christina, I want to go back to your point about boundaries. There's one thing about setting boundaries, but there's a point where the boundaries kind of get skewed, and I'm using meanness as a way to get behavioral compliance. I'm using meanness as a way to get what I need. I'm using meanness as a way to misabuse or misalign my power with what I want. And what that does for children is that, again, it keeps them from understanding that they can bring their full emotional selves to us. So what it does is that it teaches them, when I drew that circle, this beingless circle, right? That anger is on the outside of the circle. So what that does is that it teaches this child in this moment that I can't bring this emotion to you. And Corcoran, you said it just so correctly. We think we're protecting by controlling. And again, all of this comes from best intentions, right? I'm well-intentioned. I want the best for my child. No one is saying that. There are no perfect parents. We've all fallen to one of these three or all of these three, depending on the hour. Now, I was going to say depending on the day, but depending on the hour of quarantine and chill time with our families. And so it's okay. And so understanding that when I am mean, I'm going into a power struggle, yes, Christina, and abusing that power. And so when we think about the power that we have and how we want to be mindful not to use our power for petty or vindictive ends, to never thoughtlessly reject our children, right? So my child is coming to me, wanting to show me something, wanting to express something to me. Get over there and sit down, right? I've automatically shut down that connection. One of the things about the brain is that the brain only learns through when it feels safe. When the brain does not feel safe, connection cannot occur. And I'm quoting Zaretta Hammond. She's a wonderful educator. She has culturally responsive teaching. And so when I am mean, I've activated a part of the brain that's similar to that fight or flight response, meaning that the child has to be on edge when they are around me. And literally, rather than having a full emotional expression, what we tend to find is that I'm kind of tiptoeing back and forth. If you can think about someone waiting to jump in for double dutch or jump up, right? Like I'm waiting for that moment when it's okay to go in. And a lot of times what happens is that I learn that I can bring certain emotions to you, but certain emotions I can't bring to you because, like you said, Corcoran, earlier, there's only room for one of us to express this emotion. So that's what we get when we have a mean parent, right? So I am misabusing that power. I am letting you know that this emotional expression is wrong. I'm using a lot of times shame when you feel a certain emotion. And so I'm shutting down that opportunity for us to have an emotional connection. And the interesting thing about this is that for many of us, again, our intentions are so that I want my child to be able to bring me all of these emotions. But where we kind of fall short is that I don't see all the details, right? So we want our children, right? If something was ever wrong with them, I want them to bring it to me, and I want them to be able to share this with me. We think about that on a larger scale, but the details or the steps that get us to those points are when my child is frustrated about not understanding this homework problem, right? I've seen so many memes, especially since we've been home for quarantine, and of parents being frustrated, right? We see that meme. If Johnny has 5 apples, right? I'm frustrated. I'm mad. The child is upset, frustrated. No learning is occurring. It's a power struggle right here and there. And like you said, Christina, yes, they don't feel safe. They walk on eggshells. And the interesting thing about this is that it can be for certain emotions. So I know that my mom is, or my dad, or whoever is helping to raise me or guide my emotional understanding is not going to push me away when I feel joy, right? They're not going to push me away when I feel curiosity. But when I feel sadness or when I feel fear, if that's something that is not an emotion that is respected or an emotion that is allowed or given the platform to be expressed, then that's the emotion that they're going to push away. And so what then do children learn? I learn to mask my emotions for this person. How many of us, and again, this is something that continues into adulthood when we think about Mental Health Awareness Month or Emotional Health Awareness Month. How many of us now have people in our lives, and I often say this, that if I'm having a great day, I know I can call this person. But if I'm having a horrible day, there's one person in my life that I will not share this information with. And why is that? Is because I start talking about my bad day, we end up talking about your bad life, or you end up telling me all I need to do is this, right? You're overpowering or taking that emotion from you. And like you said, Beverly, children learn that they have gifts that they can never share. You're absolutely right. So that's me. What does weak look like? So weak, again, looks like lack of boundaries. I am giving in. I'm not being able to set boundaries with you. And again, the intention is there. I may have a child that I want to feel like they're able to express all of their emotions. I have a child that I want to feel like they're able to bring their full self to me. And so when we think about being weak, then one of the things that we see is that if this child continues to press this boundary, I'm going to surrender the boundary. And that's usually because maybe I don't like conflict. Maybe that's because I may have grown up in a household where I experienced a lot of meanness, and I don't want my child to experience that. So I haven't learned how to have that fine balance or that fine line between that mean and weak, where I'm actually able to be with and have some boundaries. And so I'm just giving in, right? Or one of the things that we often see too is overcompensation. And so if I am working, right? A lot of us work. A lot of parents are working, and you know what? I feel bad. I haven't spent time. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. Or there's been a period where I haven't been able to connect with you. Rather than connecting, I'm overcompensating. And there's a big difference between connection and overcompensation. Overcompensation usually is material. Connecting is usually emotional. Hey, and so when we think about that, one of the things that we have to understand is ways to connect with our children. From an emotional standpoint first, and then everything else second. And so when I am being weak, I'm giving in to the child. Usually it's causing both of us, again, a lot of frustration, because the interesting thing about that child brain, what it's doing is I'm going to keep testing these boundaries, because from a biological perspective, I'm looking for you to set this boundary with me. I'm looking for you to set this standard of what is expected of me behaviorally, what is expected of me emotionally. And the more that you're not able to do that, the more intense I'm going to push against this boundary, because that is what I need from you. When we think about children who grow up, you know what, I could have done all of this. One of the things that people often say is that I was looking for some structure and some order. And one of the things that weakness does not provide is either or both of it. It doesn't provide either one. It doesn't provide that structure. It doesn't provide that consistency, because it leads me to expect that whatever it is that I'm pushing against, right, you're not going to follow up through. So with weak, what we tend to find is that we have parents who are able to meet sometimes wants, but not necessarily needs. And so what happens for the 6 universal emotions is that you have children who grow up thinking that their emotional needs can be met through the fulfillment of wants. And so what we see is that usually there's a lot of void feeling in that space, right? I feel this void because I'm constantly looking to fill this emotional need, but I don't know what that looks like. I've never had anyone be with me. I haven't, and our ability to be with our children teaches them how to be with themselves. And so because I've never had anyone be with me, I'm looking to fill that emotional void through meeting wants or meeting desires or overcompensation in other areas. So that's something for us to think about, because that protection is not there. So we did mean, we did weak. Now let's do gone. So gone, what does that mean? That means that I have checked out of Parenting 101. That means that you are figuring this out on your own. And a lot of times that happens when I am too spent myself, right? I'm not able to be with myself. I haven't been able to be with myself. And so I can't be with you. If I can't be with myself when I'm angry, if I, as a parent, emotionally beat myself up when I'm angry, or I entitle myself when I'm angry. When you are angry, it's enough. You know what? Figure it out on your own. I'll be over here. Now, in moments, all 3 of these may be effective in moments, but when that becomes our go-to parenting style or our go-to parenting response in relation to our child expressing emotional needs, then it becomes an issue, then it becomes a problem, it becomes a healthy form of relational interaction. And so when I check out from my child emotionally, one of the things that children do, regardless of child age, it starts in infancy, but it continues on. How many of us, for those of us who are parents, remember when our children were little, just starting to learn how to walk, starting to learn how to run, the child falls, they immediately turn to look around and see, okay, wait, how am I responding in this moment? Are we laughing? Am I crying? Right? I'm looking to you to give me that emotional response. That is something that continues literally for the rest of our life. I'm looking to someone else to let me know that it's okay for me to feel this emotion. I remember when I was in grad school, I had a wonderful supervisor who shared the purpose of therapy is to give people permission to feel, right? Is to give people permission to feel. And as parents, as caregivers, as guardians, what a gift it is to give our children this permission in childhood so that they don't have to look for it in adulthood, right? And that's why we start with children when we talk about mental health awareness. And so giving people permission to feel means what? Giving people permission to feel means that when I share this emotion, you're not going to leave me. That's what gone feels like, right? When I share this emotion, I'm not going to question what it feels like because you're still right here with me. And so understanding that, and I'm glad, Corcoran, you said that you learned that is wonderful. Understanding that, right? That our ability to be with our children gives them that permission that will carry them over is so important. And so how do we do that? So we've talked about, again, mean, weak, or gone. So how do we shift that framework into one that constitutes us being able to be with our children? Well, one of the things that we acknowledge, again, first thing that we acknowledge is which of these 6 emotions I am good at, which of them come naturally to me, and which of them cause pause or cause a struggle. And where I'm pulling this information from is a wonderful parenting curriculum called Circle of Security. I just want to acknowledge the brilliant creators behind this parenting curriculum. I've been doing it for years. And so one of the terms that they use is that it produces something that we call shark music, right? So same child, some emotions, it's like a walk in the park, right? We're skipping, we're holding hands, whatever that emotion is. Some parents do very well with anger. Some parents don't do well when their child is happy, right? Their child's happiness is a trigger for them. We can acknowledge that. Other emotions, it's like I'm hearing that Jaws theme music. Other emotions, as soon as I think my child is going to be upset, I'm on it, right? Come down here and wash these dishes, and you better not have an attitude either. I'm already setting the stage. I'm already creating the platform for us to get into a power struggle. I'm already being mean before any incident has occurred. And so when we think about that, we have to acknowledge the emotions that we struggle with. I cannot give, as a parent, I cannot give my child something that I don't have, especially emotionally, because so much of relationships, when we think about nonverbal cues, when we think about emotional relationships, those are formed before anything else. Right? Children learn how to communicate with us as young as 11 months, right? They know whether or not a parent is able to meet their emotional needs, right? That's amazing how the brain works. And so when we think about this, and Christina, yes, like setting that ignition, when we think about this, then one of the things that we have to do as parents is take a step back and evaluate our own being with. And so one of the things that I wanted to leave you all with today as we process this is doing our own being with circle. Doing our own being with circle. And I put in here me as a child. And so what you would do is you would take those 6 universal emotions and you would put in your own responses. You would answer it based on your own experiences. So, as a child, I learned that joy was okay. I learned that sadness was sometimes okay. I learned that shame was outside of the circle. And then you do some reflection and you ask yourself, well, if my child were to answer this, what emotions would they put in this circle too? And ideally, we want all 6. Sometimes we say, you know what, my child can bring all 6 of these emotions to me. And that's great if you're there. But usually that's a work in progress. And so any emotion that, if we were answering this for our child, we do it for ourselves first, and then we do it for our child to see if there's any similarities and any overlap. And the reason why is because, again, parenting is a learned experience. Parenting is a learned relationship. And so usually what I experience without me, even if I'm not consciously aware of it, I'm repeating those same patterns, or I am consciously aware of it and I'm avoiding those patterns, but sometimes I haven't found a middle ground. And so a good example of that, and again, we'll get into discipline in the month of June, but comes with discipline. So many parents come to me and say, you know what, I was hit as a child. I don't want to hit my children, but I don't have another tool for discipline, so I just yell, right? And so I'm lacking the tool to kind of fill that need, knowing that I don't want to do the same thing, or I don't want my child to experience the same thing. I want them to be able to express themselves, but then because I don't have that toolkit prepared, I yield to becoming weak, or I get so frustrated that I automatically go into mean. And so on this be with circle for myself, I do it for my child, and I make a comparison. And this is truly a reflective exercise. I make a comparison. Which emotions are they able to be with me on? If you feel like you can have a conversation with your child, have that conversation with your child. Which emotions do you feel like you're able to bring to me? And I have to be able to accept that. So, and this is one of the things when we talk about reflection. If I can't accept it, if I'm going to get defensive, well, no, you can bring that to me. Well, no, that's not true, because remember that time. No, we're not doing that, right? If I have to be able to receive it, if I'm not at the point of receiving it, I'm just going to guess. And so with that, once we understand that being with is a process, right? It is a skill that we learn how to be with these 6 universal emotions. I acknowledge the ones that I am doing, and then I acknowledge the ones that serve as a challenge. Then I begin to start to meet those emotions very, very slowly, very, very slowly, meaning that I don't meet them in the moment. So let's use the examples that I gave, right? Joy is on the inside of my being with circle, anger is on the outside of my circle. So how will we do this for joy? So joy comes easily for me. I can be with my children as they express joy. So if I was tackling joy, right, I wouldn't say, you know what, when my child is at full excitement, full happiness, full joy, full appreciation, I'm not gonna, you know what, let's sit down and process this. Let's process this emotion. No, I'm going to allow them to experience it. The same thing goes with anger. When my child is at full, I'm upset, you're upset, that's not the time to have this conversation. The time to have this conversation is when one of us has had a chance to process. And so, like you said, Christina, because, and the reason for that, you hit the nail right on the head. We go back to those default emotions that we learned from childhood. And I'll just say, also, we go back to those default responses, right? So I go back to those default emotions. Again, we only have the 2. If you all remember previous Dr. Tara Tuesdays, we only have love and fear, right? That's it. Those are the default emotions from childhood. And so when we think about certain emotions trigger safety, right? And I want us to think about emotions triggering the sense of this emotion is safe to express, this emotion is unsafe to express. When I feel safe, that's a love-based emotion. When I feel unsafe, it's a fear-based emotion. And so when we talk about going back to those default emotions, and I want to bring your comment back up, I'm going back to, is this emotion okay for my child to fear, or is this emotion not okay for my child to fear? And then I become either mean, weak, or gone. And just like you said, Dennis, it's the programming, yes, the schema. And so when we think about that, and I love that you said this, Christina, about those default emotions, love and fear. My love and fear is either going to trigger being with, which is love-based, or fear, mean, weak, or gone. And I have to do an assessment. Okay, when my child expresses anger, or when my child expresses shame, how am I meeting their shame? Am I being mean to them? Am I being weak? Oh, you know what? Don't feel bad about that. This is awful. I'm patronizing them, you poor thing. Or am I being gone? You know what? You deal with that on your own. Let me know when you get happy again. And so when we deal with those things, then one of the things that we have to do is reflection, because what has happened on our being with circle is that there is a rupture, right? There has been a rupture. And so there's been a disconnect. And so what that means is that brain has not been able to connect with us. That brain has not been able has not been made to feel safe. And so when I am being triggered into mean, weak, or gone, those responses, I'm not able to make that connection. And so I'm big on us taking time out. That's one of the things, if you all remember, during the conversation about restorative practices with Randy Green, he talked about adults taking time out, right? So I'm not going to put you in the corner. I am going to walk away. I'm going to say, and part of this process for ourselves in our own reprogramming is to acknowledge this out loud, because we go back to that default programming, or like Dennis and Christina has said, that programming or those default emotions, a lot of times it's happening so fast, we're not even aware of it until later. And so how many of us, and I'm going to give an example. I've seen this too on social media. There was a question, how did your mom used to apologize to you? And people come eat. I bought you something. You want something from the store, right? I've had a chance to process it. I feel like I may have overreacted, but I don't know how to repair, but I'm looking to make that repair, right? And so we want to go a step further, meaning that I've had a chance to process it. I know I may have overreacted or reacted in a way that doesn't serve this connection that I'm trying to keep. And I want to make that repair. So how then do I make that repair? So whether, and the beautiful thing about whether or not I'm mean, weak, or gone, because all three of them produce that not safe, right, which produces fear, which produces a lack of protection, meaning that then means on the flip side that all three of them can be repaired the same way. I'm going to acknowledge my emotional response to my child's emotions. That's first, right? And so how I give my child permission to express their emotions is to acknowledge mine, is to give myself the platform to share mine. I'm modeling the emotional expression that I want my child to display. So I've noticed that I become mean, weak, or gone. I'm going to take a step back, right? I'm going to have a moment to process. I'm going to own my emotion. You know what? I'm feeling frustrated in this moment. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to own that because there's nothing wrong with that. We want to teach people how to express their emotions through their words before it turns into behavioral responses. We want to teach that skill. We want to teach it to our children. We want to emphasize it for ourselves. I'm going to own my emotional response. Then I'm going to come back in and circle around when we are both calm, right? When we are both calm. Remember when this happened? Let's talk about it. I felt upset when you did this. When I responded this way, I realized that I was being mean in that moment. When I responded this way, I realized I was being weak in that moment. I should not have given you back your phone because I said you couldn't get it back until Friday. I gave it back to you on Tuesday. I was being weak in that moment. I'm going to own that. And then I'm going to make a repair, meaning that I'm going to insert something that shows that I've acknowledged my rupture. And then I'm going to insert something that shows that I'm going to seal it up. So because I want to apologize to you if I was being mean, if I was being weak, I want to reinstate the punishment or whatever the consequence was. If I was being gone, I want to be present. I want to know if you're willing to have that conversation with me again. I was checked out in that moment because I was feeling whatever it is that I was feeling. I want to be, and so part of that repair or what that does in that moment, one, for our children, it models two things. Well, it models two things. It models emotion regulation, but it also models behavioral modification. And those are two skills when we talk about teaching our children what emotional health means. It means that I don't have to feel guilty about any emotion that I'm carrying. There was a story making its rounds on social media about, and I don't know if any of you saw this, about a mom talking about her son and her daughter, and the son had hurt the daughter's feelings, and the son got in trouble, and the daughter felt bad that he got in trouble. And she wanted to apologize, and the parents had a restorative circle, and people were talking about, how beautiful it was that one, she didn't have to apologize for holding someone else accountable for how they made that person feel. And that's so important for our children. When we think about our children, one of the ways that so many of us have been raised is our behaviors trigger someone else's emotions, right? So y'all are driving me crazy. Oh my goodness, y'all are doing such and such. Y'all are doing such and such. I want to own that, right? Your behavior is making me frustrated when you do this, but I want to break it down into very, very specific steps. When you do this, I feel frustrated. When you do this, I feel such and such. Because what I'm doing in that moment, again, is I'm teaching behavioral modification, but then also emotion regulation. And so when I'm saying that, what I'm saying is that as a parent, I still get to choose my emotional and more importantly, I get to choose my behavioral response to my child's emotion. And so when I'm teaching my children how to walk through this, how to understand their emotional health, what we teach is that all emotions are relevant, right? All emotions are relevant. I was about to say all emotions matter, but they do. All emotions matter, meaning that all emotions are welcome here, even if the behavior is not, which is a phrase that you all have heard me say many, many times. But before we can even get to the behaviors, one of the things that we do when we break down behaviors are outcomes. Behaviors are patterns or results of thoughts. Thoughts are results of emotions. We want to get here, right? We want to start at step one. Emotions lead to thoughts, thoughts lead to behaviors. And so I don't even want to address behaviors until we can get to that emotional connection piece, that emotional health piece. So when you feel upset, what is it that you need from me in order to feel like I'm being with you? Do we need to have safe words? Do we need to have Am I able to give you 5 minutes? Even, and like you said, Corcoran, even if we're upset about the same thing, am I still going to respect your person enough? And that goes into that control thing. If I operate out of the lens of being mean, oftentimes I'm seeing you as a person to be managed or a person to be controlled. And so the thought that you have your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own ways of expressing yourself may be something that I have to make peace with first. And so when I'm able to see you as a person whose thoughts and opinions and emotions are just as valid and just as welcome as mine, then I'm allowing both of these emotions to coexist. And so in order to do that, sometimes we have to step away with the intention of coming back together and creating that platform. When you did this, I felt this. And then allowing my child to say to me, well, when you said this, it hurt my feelings. And even if that wasn't my intention, I have to own that in that moment and then continue to move on as well. So as we get ready to conclude, when we think about teaching our children about their emotional health, the first step is that it teaches us, in order to do that, we have to understand how we respond to our children expressing their emotions. That is step one, right? Am I responding in a way? I want to go back to Christina's point, and I love this. I'm just saying this. I would have loved for my parents to communicate their feelings more so that I could understand that. That is a very real statement. And I think a lot of times too, it's cultural. And one of the things that I always say about that is that parenting has evolved over time so much, meaning that these kind of outlets were not available 15, 25 years ago. You know, when we think about parenting support and parenting programs and allowing parents to give themselves permission to feel something other than I just have to get the job done. And so when we talk about, and thank you, Nathaniel, too, when we talk about our responses to their emotions, is their emotional response triggering something in me that produces love or produces fear, right? Love is being with, fear is I'm having a response that makes me mean, makes me weak, makes me gone. We want to break down this culturally. We're going to get into this even more when we get into discipline. We're going to break this down culturally and understand the cultural framework that we've been taught about these three, right? Because we've been taught that culturally, some are better than others. What I'm here to say tonight is all of them produce the same feeling for your child of feeling unsafe and unprotected, right? Unsafe and unprotected, whether or not I'm mean, whether or not I'm weak, whether or not I'm gone, I'm leaving a child to fend for themselves. I'm leaving that emotion outside of my being with circle, which means that that child has to learn how to navigate that emotional experience on their own, which also means that they learn not to bring this emotion to me. And so that means that they find someone else. They have to go inside. Because the thing about our emotions is that they don't go anywhere, right? I just learn a better way of masking them, or I learn a better way of finding someone else to deal with them because I know I can't bring it to you. When I realize that certain emotions trigger in me that mean, weak, or gone, I want to do a self-inventory, and I want to start noticing when there have been ruptures in my day. So, we may not be able to talk about you coming home late from curfew, but we can talk about your room not being clean, right? Still produces anger in me, still produces frustration for you. I'm going to start small because I want to give myself, I want to build up that muscle. And so meaning that I want to connect with my child in a way that allows both of our emotions to coexist. When I'm mean, weak, or gone, and I want to go back to Corcoran's point, only one of our emotions is able to be there, is able to exist. And so when I'm allowing space for both of these emotions to coexist, I'm acknowledging that this emotions brings up fear for me. It triggers me in some kind of way, and yet I still want to make that repair with you. So I still want to be able to connect with you in another way. And so as we think about our takeaway points from this, how am I creating these spaces for my child to express their emotions? One, I'm modeling my own emotional expression. I feel upset when you do this. I feel happy when you do this. I feel thankful that we can have this conversation after we were both upset, right? I feel excited that we were able to come together in this way. And so understanding that means that I'm creating the platform for my child to understand that those emotions are valid and they're welcome in this space, even if I don't know what to do with them. If I feel like I have the relationship with my child where I'm going to allow them to hold me accountable. When you see me do this, right? This is my behavior when I get mean. when you hold me accountable, because I want to shift, and I want not to be mean. I want to be with you as you experience this emotion, even if the consequence is still going to be there. A lot of times, and that cultural piece too, that Christina, you talked about too, is that fear that if I give in to my child, I'm a weak parent. I'm not going to be able to set boundaries. It's not true, right? It's not true at all. So we want to work to dispel those myths as well. I hope that this session has been helpful. Mathina, thank you so much for your feedback. I hope this session has been helpful. And thank you, Tania, too. So I'm glad that you are on here. And so we're going to continue this conversation. This conversation is actually going to continue in our June series. We're going to have a whole series on discipline, a whole month long on discipline. And so I hope that you all will join me. But I wanted to start the conversation with children's emotions, because, again, our emotions lead to our thoughts lead to our behaviors. And so if I've learned that shame is an emotion I can't express, I want us to break this down. I want us to understand that how that influences my thoughts about myself, how that influences my thoughts about my world, and then how that impacts the behaviors that I express, right? Emotions, thoughts, behaviors. We oftentimes look at behaviors without kind of doing retroactive or retrospective or introspective analysis of thoughts and emotions. So thank you all so much for tuning in with me this evening. I hope to see you all next week. We will be staying on the theme of Mental Health Awareness Month, and again, and how it impacts us in relationships. So it's going to always be a two-part conversation about ourselves and those that we are dealing with, because again, we want to make sure that we're maintaining our mental health in these relationships. So it's always going to be a two-part conversation. Thank you all so much. If you're new to the Dr. Tara community, I would love to connect with you. If you want to leave your email address in the comments, or send me a private message with your email address. We are working on many things. We're getting the newsletter out finally, and we're also working on a few courses where we'll actually be able to do series and sessions, interactive sessions and workbooks and everything. So it's exciting time. But thank you all so much for joining me today. I would love to stay connected. Hopefully I'll see you next week. And as always, let's heal together. Peace. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.